How is it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. For those of you that are new here, my name is Ethan Bridge. I'm host of the Social Media Marketing School podcast and the guy behind the Instagram page at The Marketing Ethan. Video is one of these things that can really level up your social media page, especially if you're building a personal brand. Video is a form of content where your audience can begin to connect with you on a more personal level. They will be seeing your face, they will be seeing how you interact, how you talk, your tone of voice, your personality, all of these different things that cannot really be brought across in a single image or a carousel post. And that's why I introduce quite a bit of video into the content I produce, because I want to connect with my audience on that personal level. I am a personal brand, and therefore I want people to know me. But I completely understand first jumping on video or recording a podcast or sitting in front of a camera, talking to essentially nobody but a lens, and then producing a quality piece of video content. It's quite hard, it's quite nerve-wracking, especially if you haven't done it before, because it's a strange interaction. You are essentially just talking to yourself, but acting as if you are talking to quite a large audience, especially if you have a decent following. So it can be quite overwhelming. So that is why in today's podcast episode, I'm going to be going over some points so that you can become comfortable recording video, recording yourself on camera. So without any further ado, let's just dive straight into the first point. Number one, you need to plan your content. Plan in advance. Know what you're going to talk about. Don't just come to the point where you're going to record a video, sit down and then wing it. One, you're just going to be speaking randomly and not getting across the point you want to actually get across in the first place. But it's just going to look scruffy. You're going to look unorganized. You're going to look like you were unprepared. You don't want to be unprepared. Your video content needs to be something that is displaying your expertise and building that authority, and therefore it needs to look professional. It needs to show that you know what you're talking about and you can just talk about a certain topic with confidence to a high quality level. So if you come in unorganized, having no idea what you're going to talk about, it's not going to come across that way. So having a plan so that you can just sit down and go and run with it and record that piece of video with confidence is going to really, really help you with that quality of the video. Now, I don't want you to script your video word for word. This isn't only going to take so much time, but it's really obvious if you are a viewer watching the video when someone is reading off a script. Unless you are really good at reading a script and you can make it seem as if you aren't reading a script, it's difficult to make it sound like you're not reading, because you are. So what I do is I just make notes, bullet points, and I just talk from these bullet points. I give myself an overarching idea and then sort of go along with that point and make it up as I go. I have in my head what I want to say, but it's not on a script, and therefore it's not sounding like I'm reading. It's all coming from my head. It sounds natural. It sounds like I'm coming up with it from my head, and it's also going to help show my authority, show my expertise, because I'm just talking about a topic without reading something. It's not perfectly scripted. Perfection isn't a thing that you need to achieve with video. It just needs to be something that shows your personality, shows your confidence, and shows your expertise. So point number one, don't come unprepared. Have a plan, know what you're going to talk about. Point number two, be overly animated. Nobody wants to watch a video where your voice has no intonation and you are speaking like this. That's boring. That's so boring to watch. A video piece of content needs to be uplifting. It needs to be exciting. You need to have that intonation in your voice. You need to have that expression, that enthusiasm, because that's going to shine through within your content. You got to think about this. People watching your video are going to feel a certain way. That is determined by the way you portray yourself on that video. If you are energetic, your audience is going to be energetic. If you are serious, your audience is going to be serious. If you are boring, your audience is going to be bored. So if you are over-exaggerating words you use and being enthusiastic and being really quite interesting in the way you are talking, that is going to make your audience feel a certain way. They are going to enjoy watching your video because it's exciting to watch. It's not you just sitting there talking in the same tone of voice the whole time. You are clearly enthusiastic with what you're talking about, so your audience is also going to be enthusiastic because you are making your piece of content feel that way. So this is a very, very simple point, but be overly enthusiastic. Use hand gestures, use effects if you want to, have overlays, you name it. You can get as complicated as you want, especially if you are a very, very good video editor, but don't just sit there and be boring, because your video will be boring. Be enthusiastic, be overly animated with your hand gestures, and make it more of an interaction and interesting to watch, because that's what we want when we view video content. Point number 3. Now, I did pick up on this in point 1, but you need to avoid perfectionism. Perfectionism doesn't exist. It's completely subjective. What you see as perfect may not be seen as perfect to someone else, or what you don't see as perfect might be seen as perfect to someone else. So you can never achieve perfect. So don't aim to have that perfect video, especially when you're first starting out, because when you first start recording video, you're going to look back at that piece of video in 3-4 months' time and think, wow, that was awful. I certainly did it. I look back at my first video, I'm sitting in the pitch black. The lighting was horrendous. I don't know what I was doing. I was monotoning my voice. I wasn't following that previous point I mentioned. I wasn't enthusiastic, and it just didn't work. But I started. It was an attempt. And ever since I've continued to record video, I've improved and improved and improved. So aiming for perfectionism just isn't a thing. Also, I wanted to mention that you need to remember what you are recording isn't going to be what you post, because you're going to edit your video. You're not going to leave in all your mistakes. You're going to be able to cut them out. So if you stumble on your words, don't worry, just repeat yourself and start again, or move back to a point where you think it's best to start from, because then when you come to post-edit, you can cut out that bit, and then when you cut it out, it's going to look like a seamless video where you didn't make any mistakes in the first place. So remember, what you are recording isn't going to be what you post, because that editing process is going to cut out all the mistakes, so that what you're left with is that free-flowing, nicely put together video. And you can give yourself some time to think as well. If you forget what you're going to say, or you're trying to think of another point to try and back up something you just mentioned, take a breather, have a think, and then talk, because you can cut out that gap in the edit and it will look like it wasn't there before. So to round up, don't aim for perfectionism because it doesn't exist, and remember that what you record on your camera, the raw edit, isn't going to be what you post. You get to edit it and cut out your mistakes. So don't worry and don't panic if you do make some mistakes on the raw recording. Now, moving on to the final point, and it's just practice, practice, practice. It's really, really that simple. When you first start, as I mentioned, my first video was horrendous. Your first video, I'm going to say it now, is going to be rubbish. Unless you're used to being on camera and you've recorded video elsewhere, but this just happens to be the first video you're posting on your social media page, it will be bad. If you have recorded video before, use that to your advantage and start off from a good point. But it's not something to worry about if that first video you record and you post is not great. You might not have invested in a good camera. Fine, you don't need a good camera. You might not have invested in a good microphone yet. Fine, you don't need a good microphone to begin with. If it's something that you begin to enjoy and you want to improve over time, of course, buy that good camera, buy that good lighting, buy that good microphone, but don't do it straight away. Practice first, build up that confidence so that when you do buy these better pieces of equipment, you know that you can use them to your full potential. To begin with, fine, just use your phone. If you've got an iPhone, use the back camera. The back cameras on phones nowadays are phenomenal. Chuck in some earphones and use the microphone on those earphones. Simple. You don't have to worry. Just think about your lighting, because that will make a difference when you record on a phone. Stand in front of a window and have a normal backdrop. Don't have a cluttered backdrop and washing everywhere and clothes on the floor, a messy desk. Think of it like I have. I've got a plain wall behind me if you're watching the video version of the podcast, and I've got good lighting. And you can do the same. You can stand up against a black background, or you can have a nice desk set up behind you, something along those lines. You don't have to get too complicated. You don't have to have a studio grade setup. Just start with what you have and begin practicing, begin improving, and you will get better and better and better. But you cannot post that 100th video without posting your first. So you need to remember, with each piece of content you produce, you will get better and better. the whole point of practicing. Your recording will get better, your editing will get better, everything will get better, and you'll learn certain techniques on what you need to do to keep people engaged, how you can edit effects on to, again, keep people engaged. And as I say, this is all going to come with practice. I don't want to talk about it anymore because I feel as if I keep repeating myself here, but just keep practicing, keep posting, and you will get better. And they round up my tips for increasing your confidence on camera. And that wraps up today's video. If you did enjoy, as you can see, I'm a very new creator here on YouTube, so every little helps when it comes to smashing that subscribe button, hitting that like button, and turning on post notifications. If you did enjoy what you watched today, though, I did just want to mention that this is the video version of my podcast, Social Media Marketing School, and the audio version of the podcast is actually the place to be. Why? Because I actually post content on the audio version of the podcast earlier than I do here on YouTube. So if you want to consume this content sooner, make sure you subscribe to the audio version of the podcast. I will leave some links in the description, so just head down there and subscribe. But if you have any questions with regards to anything I mentioned, please just reach out to me on Instagram @themarketingethan, send me a DM, and I'll make sure I get back to you no matter what. But if you have made it to this point in the video, I just want to finish off by saying thank you all for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.